Hi, welcome to Half a Dozen Angels. This is Melanie, otherwise known as Yaya. Welcome to my channel. You can pull up that chair, grab a drink, get comfortable, whatever you need to do, and let's get down to it. Okay, so first of all, if you're new to my channel, we do not have any editing. We do not edit anything. We do not have scripts. We do not have notes. So if you see a blooper, then we're going to laugh about it together because that's life. And so anyway, the subject today is kind of a scary one. It happened to our family. I'm sure other people have similar stories because this individual affected a lot of people. With our family, our story starts off with, we lived in Wichita, Kansas. My husband was at McConnell Air Force Base. We had just got married. We lived in a loft apartment. We lived in that loft apartment until I heard that a woman was mugged in the laundry room. And that just really floored me on many different levels. It scared me and also floored me because I thought, why would somebody mug somebody in a laundry facility? I mean, what'd she have on her? 4 quarters? So with that said, I just wanted to move out of that apartment complex. I wanted to go to a suburb because 2 weeks after our honeymoon, that when we had moved there, this happened, and so I was like, okay. And then though, the thing that pushed me over was I got pregnant 2 weeks after our honeymoon. So I thought, okay, I don't want to live here, and because I just don't feel safe. So we moved to Park City. Park City is 5 miles outside of Wichita, and nowadays it's more like just an extension of Wichita because Wichita has grown so much. So at the time, Wichita had 300,000 people, and I'm not sure how many Park City had, but we moved to Park City and we became fast friends with the girl next door. She was my bestie, and her husband actually became my husband's best friend. So we had a good time. We were young, and we liked playing pranks on each other and silly things like that. And we started our families together, so to speak. So I had my daughter, she has her daughter a couple months later, and then I got pregnant with my son, and then 6 months later she gets pregnant with her son. So it's that kind of friendship that we shared a lot together. So to get to the B.T.K. part, when I moved to Park City to be safe, I didn't know that I moved very close and neighbor-wise to B.T.K. He was my neighbor 2 houses back from me, and that was the first time I lived in Park City. I lived on 61st Street North the first time, and then the second time, because our family kept getting bigger and we just wanted a better house, and at one point we had actually moved away and came back. So anyway, altogether I lived as B.T.K.'s neighbor 3 different times in 3 different locations. My second to last house on Independence, it's now a Spangles. It's now a Spangles, so you could Google that. But anyway, it was on that corner, and so there was 61st Street, and then 61st Street, and then you turn and go to his house 2 houses down. So the third time that we lived there was my last time, and we had moved away and came back. And this time my husband was overseas, and he had been in the Air Force, Air National Guard, and all that kind of thing. And so he was gone overseas for half a year. Well, while he was gone, I moved back to Park City, and I had moved to a house that, if there hadn't been a ditch between my yard and Dawn's yard, my best friend, if there hadn't been that ditch there, we would have shared the same back fence, so to speak, her side fence with my back fence. But I also didn't know that B.T.K., the serial killer, if the ditch hadn't been there, his side post in his backyard and my diagonal post would have been the same post. So a little too close for comfort. And I had dogs at the time that would lose their mind at night, 2 basset hounds, Sophie and Higgins. And I didn't know that, who knows what he was doing out there. There was a tin shed in his backyard. And later on, you'll hear of what the FBI was finding in that. But first, let me explain that while my husband was gone, this man I knew him as Dennis Rader, the dog catcher, the compliance officer. Let me backtrack just a second. The second house we lived in, the one that's now Spangles, he had actually let my dog out and then captured him, put him in the dog truck, the whatever it's called, the dog catcher's truck or whatever. And it cost me $50 to get my dog out of doggy jail. And later we heard a lot of stories about him letting other people's dogs out just so he could put them in his truck and get money. It was weird. Everything about this story is weird. So fast forward to 2004. My husband is overseas, and I'm living in this house, and now this house is on West Parkview Drive. So you have Independence here and West Parkview Drive here, and that's why my house and his house were like diagonal back together. So like I said, we would have shared a fence post if the ditch had not been there. So what happened is this man, Dennis Rader, would park outside of my house. I'm not kidding, almost every day, Monday through Friday. And I thought, what in the world is this man doing? Why is he outside of my house? He made me so paranoid I wouldn't open the front curtains all the way. I'd open them just enough to where I could see out, but he couldn't see in. I saw him terrorize my next door neighbor in like weird, frivolous ways that's just annoying. I made quick friends with her as well. And for example, he would park outside of my house and I would see him staring at her house and my house. And like if her grass got 1 inch too long, he would write her up. He'd give her a ticket. If her trash can was out one day too late, because like if she'd gone camping and then just didn't bring in her big trash can, he would give her a ticket. And then there was one time where we were preparing for citywide yard sales. She had boxes on her front porch. She was gone, and I see him pull up again. This time he gets out of the truck. He goes over. He starts going through her boxes. And I thought, she is going to lose her freaking mind if she knows about this. And I thought, well, something else I'm going to have to tell her. So just as I'm thinking that, she pulls up at the same time that he's there. So yeah, she bounces out of that minivan, and I thought she was going to whip the floor with this man, but she basically is yelling at him, and he's yelling at her and saying, city ordinance, blah, 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 you can't have boxes on your front porch. And she's just like, you're freaking crazy. And so they're yelling back and forth, and I just don't even know what to think of, like, what's going on. And so anyway, then by the time my husband gets back, like I said, he was gone half of a year. And so when he gets back, him and Mike, his best friend, they rejoin, and they're having a good time together, just being funny guys and playing tricks on each other and stuff like that. So when I say pranks or tricks, like for example, his best friend would put the barbecue grill like right up against our back door. So when we got home from a trip, we couldn't get out the back door. He thought it was funny. Or he would, one time he tied all of my children's bikes into the tree. We pull up and there's bikes dangling from the tree. I had 4 kids at the time. And so, it was like a haha, yeah, Mike, come get my bikes down, kind of moment. So it was just, we were having a fun life with our best friends, not knowing we were sitting in the middle of a stewing pot with a serial killer. You never know. And so, anyway, he would still park in front of my house. I think he was confused when my husband got home from the Iraq War, because he thought I was a single mom, I think. And so maybe that's why he was targeting me. But he would still sit out there, not quite as much. It's like he would be more stealth about it. He wouldn't be so blatant about it. Okay, so what went down, I honest to goodness believe that one of my friend's tricks on us wound up catching B.T.K. And let me explain. So one time we went back home. I thought my dad was dying, and so I had gone back to take care of him. I come back to Wichita, and this is 2004, around October. And to my knowledge, nobody knows this except our best friends. And I don't think it's been said on any media of anything. You know, everybody wonders, like, why did he come back after 10 years of being gone? Because in 1991, when we first moved there, he had made his last killing, or we hope his last killing, but he had killed somebody on that block. I think it was an older woman. And before that, and including her, he had killed 10 total people. So this dated back into the 70s all the way to 1991. So then they don't hear about him from 1991 all the way to 2004. And so I'm sure everybody was thinking, you know, did he go to jail? Why is this person just all of a sudden stopping the murders? You know, we were grateful, but everybody wondered what was going on. So the prank that I feel caught B.T.K. was, we had come back again from seeing my dad. We came home. It was around Halloween. We saw what looked like blood. Thankfully, it was not. It was ketchup. But it said B.T.K. was here, and then it had a creepy arrow pointing down. And my children had set out tombstones that said things like Frankenstein, or, you know, cousin it, or something cute. And on my tombstones, my hubby's best friend had written, B.T.K. was here, B.T.K., here lies B.T.K., things like that on our tombstones. And so I didn't think that much of it, other than I wanted Mike to clean my front door, and because I had ketchup all over it. But anyway, what was very weird, we later find out, right after that, just a couple weeks later, B.T.K. reemerges and starts communicating again with the press, with, I think it was called Cake 10 News, and with the police department. So later on, I mean, not at the time, but later, in retrospect, I wondered, how many times did he park in front of my house? How many times did he go around that block and see his initials, B.T.K., and that stands for what he did to his victims, but I'm not going to say it. You can Google it. But how many times did he go around my house? How many times did he, you know, stalk the house while I was gone that weekend? Because that was written on a Friday, and I didn't get home till Sunday night. So I know he had the entire weekend to feel that narcissistic, hey, I haven't been forgotten. I'm like, you know, I'm like a Jeffrey Dahmer kind of, you know, person, but people don't know the real me kind of thing. And I thought, because that's how he acted, was narcissistic. He acted like he owned Park City. He'd drive around in his little compliance truck just like he was better than everybody else. And one particular thing, right after the incident with the tombstones and the creepy thing on the front door that my friend had done, right after that, I purchased a caution children playing sign. It kind of looks like one of those we're mopping signs that's like says floor is wet. It was like that. Came from Toys R Us, and I had it at the foot of my driveway because the entrance to that road, West Parkview Drive, is very dangerous. It doesn't have sidewalks for little kids to play on, or didn't at the time. And so I worried about my kids on their bikes, so that's why I had bought that sign, put it at the bottom of our driveway. Well, I'm standing talking to my friend, a different friend, next door, on a friend on West Parkview Drive. My other friend still lives on 61st Street North. And so I was standing there just talking to her, just gabbing, we were being girls, you know, and all of a sudden I hear somebody yelling like they're in the middle of a fight. And I thought, and I turned over my right shoulder and I look, and it's Dennis Rader, the dog catcher, and he's screaming at me. I mean, legit, this man sounded like he was flat out just having an argument with somebody. And I thought, it can't be me. I don't even know. And so I looked at Erin and I said, my friend that I was talking to, and I said, is he talking to me? And she said, I think so. Talking through her teeth, because she was facing him. I was facing away from him. And so what went through my mind is, what's the most Christian thing I can possibly say to this man who is losing his mind on me? And so I turned and I said, okay, I'll move it. Because he was screaming, city ordinance, blah, 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 you can't have a sign, blah, blah, blah. And he's telling me all about city ordinances and all this, and he's screaming at me. So anyway, I said, okay. And then I just turned back to my friend, and I said, is he still there? And she's like, yeah, he is. I was like, okay. And so I just looked at her, and I said, I'm not going to run over there like a 2-year-old is in trouble or something, and I'm not going to move until he moves. I know. I was young. Anyway, so he finally moves. And the roads in Park City are kind of like horseshoe shaped, some of them. So I stood there with Erin, waited till I couldn't see him anymore, and then I booked it over there, grabbed that sign, folded it in, shut it, threw it like a frisbee up against my house. And then I zoomed back over to where my friend was, like I hadn't moved. Yes, I was ornery. So he comes back around, and he's just glaring at us. And I thought, okay, go do you. Anyway, that was just bizarre. And then shortly after that, I moved to the country. And right after I moved to the country, my friend calls me and says, hey, did you hear? And I said, hear what? And she goes, they caught B.T.K. And I was like, what? Are you serious? And she goes, no, that's not even the part that's going to freak you out. I said, what? She goes, he was your neighbor. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, it was Dennis Rader, the dog catcher, the compliance officer, is the serial killer. And I thought, oh my gosh, are you serious? That man that screamed at me? Because later on, the thing that caught my attention with the day that he had screamed at me, was that somebody's at my door. And the dogs are going to go insane. Anybody with little dogs or big dogs knows what I'm talking about. So anyway, I had moved away. She called me. She said it was Dennis Rader. And so what I thought about later was when his full story was told on the news and on Dateline, 2020, all those shows, it came out that one of his victims had pulled up in her driveway, and she inadvertently was blocking the sidewalk because she was trying to unload a bunch of flowers out of her vehicle. And B.T.K. had come around, Dennis Rader, and screamed and yelled at her that she was breaking some city ordinance about blocking the sidewalk. And she didn't know it, but later when she goes to vent, she's in the house and talking to her brother, I think it was, or somebody like that. And she was telling the story about this guy, this dog catcher, losing his mind on her. And she didn't know he was in the house listening to her. And so she was one of his victims, I think. But anyway, they caught him, and I think they caught him from him being narcissistic, basically. He was stupid enough to ask the cops through the media, hey, if I send you a CD, is there any way you can trace it back to me? And they were like, no. Of course, they're not going to be honest with a serial killer. They want to catch him. And in the past, he had left weird clues like cereal boxes and creepy notes, and he had written back and forth to the paper and all kinds of weird stuff. So anyway, they say, no, there's no way, no way we could trace that. So he's stupid enough. Come to find out, he's the president of the Lutheran Church. He uses their equipment, their printer, their whatever, and he burns the CD, and he gives it to, or he sends it to the cops. So right after that, they catch him. So they catch him, they book him. You'll see online all of the nitbits about like his court case and how he stood up in front of everybody. And one thing that just really blew my mind, they ask, do you have any other questions? And he literally has the nerve and stupidity to say, well, I have one. Why did you guys lie to me about the burned CD? Why did you lie to me? And when I heard him, that he had said that to the cops, I thought, wow. It blows my mind how genius some of these killers can be, but yet be so stupid on the other side. It was just bizarre. So anyway, that's the case of B.T.K. from my family's perspective. And this man is in prison for the rest of his life, thankfully. They caught him through the CD, and plus they did DNA analysis where they actually took DNA from one of his daughter's exams, he only has one daughter, but her exam that she had years back, and for some reason DNA was kept, and so they compared it to that, and they knew that she was a relative of B.T.K. So he was not only caught from the CD, but he was also caught eventually from also DNA. So that's the case of B.T.K. according to our family. It just blows my mind. You never know. You never know. So I joke to my husband, my blinds stay shut at night. Nobody can see through my house at night. And because before this, he was like, who would be looking at our windows? Nobody would be looking at our windows. Nobody would be stalking us. And so after this, he realized, yeah, especially when, like, for example, my friend next door on West Parkview Drive, her brother or cousin, I can't remember which, but was in her backyard and actually took videotape of the FBI pulling things out of that tin shed that I talked about. I think it was like necklaces and other creepy memorabilia that he kept, and like IDs and things like that. So anyway, I'm so grateful that this man is in prison. I am so grateful I was not a victim. I do believe that I was on the list. I believe I was on the list because he thought I was a single female living with 4 kids, and he had no idea about my husband until later on. And so anyway, it's creepy and it's a true story. So hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, please. I'm a new channel and I would deeply appreciate it. And thank you, and have a wonderful day. God bless.